This video is not about football. This video is about brotherly love. This year, the Philadelphia Eagles have been playing their hearts out. They've been led by the best offensive line in the NFL with the best run game and the best defense. Since week 5 this season, the Eagles have only lost once. There is so much you can take away from their victories through those weeks, from Devontae Smith's miraculous catches and A.J. Brown's speed and strength and key blocks and receptions, to Jalen Carter's game-winning sacks, and of course, the multiple home run touchdowns by Saquon Barkley. But what I love about this team, and why I believe they made it all the way to the Super Bowl this year, came from the game that they lost to the Washington Commanders in Week 14, ending a 10-game win streak. The Eagles played extremely well that game. They lost starting quarterback Jalen Hurts in the first quarter to what would end up being ruled a concussion, but they still managed to play incredibly well, putting up 33 points in an away matchup. But ultimately, it was not enough to defeat the Commanders. I believe this loss was consequential to the Eagles' success for the remainder of the season. Lots of teams lose. Every loss is painful, especially one that upsets a win streak. It can destroy a team's momentum. Believe me, the Eagles know all about that from last season. After starting the season 10-1, they lost in a blowout at home to the San Francisco 49ers. They would go on to lose 5 of their 6 remaining regular season games, mostly in blowouts to teams with worse records. Now, there's a lot of things you can take away from a season like that, but you cannot let your losses create your narrative. Yes, you should learn from your mistakes, but you shouldn't harp on them. Remember what that one coach said after his player suffered a bad play?
Coach, I'm sorry. You know what the happiest animal on earth is? It's a goldfish. You know why?
No.
Got a 10-second memory. Be a goldfish, Sam. Yeah.
That guy is right, and I feel like the Eagles team may have binged Ted Lasso in their offseason, because after their loss to the Commanders, they were all goldfishes. In the Commanders game, Devontae Smith dropped the ball at a key moment. He may have cost the Eagles win and thereby ceding the top seed to the Lions. He clearly felt awful. After the game, though, he didn't harp on it. He knew he screwed up. You can see it in his eyes.
I ain't gonna beat myself up over it. It's life, part of the game. And shit. I made all the tough catches there, and then the one I had, I dropped. It is what it is.
You ain't gonna move on from this and obviously not let it weigh down on your shoulders too much.
The game over with. And nothing I can do about it now.
He knew that focusing on it would lead to a downward spiral. Saquon Barkley, easily the Eagles' MVP this year, having one of the greatest seasons for a running back of all time, started the season by missing an easy pass in Atlanta that ended up losing the game and setting them up for a 2-2 record at the beginning of the season. Even then, his attitude was wanting to move on. After the loss to the Commanders, he was asked what he would say to Devontae Smith about his ball drop.
I don't need to get words for Smitty. Smitty's a hell of a player. And even in that moment in the lane, I put the responsibility on myself. But there's a lot of plays that every single body could have made. We're going to just move on and finish the season off strong. We just didn't get the job done, you know?
It has to be the worst feeling in the world to be the one that cost your team the game. If you were a player on the team, you might resent your teammates. Not this Eagles team, though. Listen to what A.J. Brown said after the Commanders' loss, when literally the entire team was down.
Nobody's in here better not lose no confidence. You know, you don't let hard times harm you. It's not even a hard time. This is stuff you can control. Life happens, and you're not gonna get everything you want. Yes, you can let it fuel you. To me, I don't. You know, me personally, you know, when the game's over, it's over. Even win or lose. So I mean, I'm not attached to it with the emotion.
Look, sometimes you can't help but wallow in your losses, but you cannot stay there. You have to be able to move on. Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle who had a standout season, performed at the top of his game versus the Commanders. Even though they still lost, he did not blame his team. He was asked in the locker room if he was frustrated, and I love how he responded.
Any frustration level associated with that, having the lead, chance to clinch the division and not quite able to?
I look frustrated. Nah, I ain't frustrated at all, man. We're moving on to next week. Just like how it been in college, you know, when you get to the playoffs, your record is 0-0. Just win or go home then. I can't do nothing. I can't reverse time or nothing. Just gotta go on to the next play. I'm not for to bring up old stuff like, hey, we shouldn't did this, shouldn't have did it. Nah, we move on.
Losing a big game could easily drive a team apart. It's natural to blame your losses on the weakest link. But of course, that doesn't help anyone. It only makes it harder to win. Jordan Mailata, the left tackle, knows this. With the Eagles, he lost in the Super Bowl, and he was there last year when they spun out and lost in the playoffs too. But listen to what he said this week, now that they have another shot.
I mean, after a year like last year, you kind of don't want to repeat that. You don't want history to repeat itself in that way, and it lit a lot of fire under a lot of guys on this team that are still here, part of this team now. We became closer because of that.
This year, the Eagles' superpower is not focusing on their losses. It's focusing on what's ahead of them. Or, to put it succinctly and elegantly,
you take you a deuce, you don't sit there and look at it. You flush it and move on. We're gonna flush it and move on.
Thank you, Jalen. As you can tell, I've been looking back on this season and why I feel like this year's team is so special. Obviously, a lot of this has to do with their hard work, their coach staffs, the special teams, and everyone at the organization, from the general manager down, created a cohesive team in an environment where they could thrive. But I think the extra element that Philadelphia has is brotherly love. Look at 6'7", 363-pound Mekhi Becton after realizing he was going to the playoffs for the first time.
Hey man, it's first time making the playoffs.
Hey, you listen to me, my.
Oh, this is crazy.
You look at me. I love it.
Now, you're probably watching this video after the Super Bowl, and while I hope the Eagles win, it's very possible they lose it this year. That's not going to change a thing for me as a fan. This team moves on from their losses, and honestly, us Eagles fans could take a page out of that book. We feel those losses too, and we can unfairly take out that anger on the players or the coaches or even Santa Claus. But for me, it's still the week before the Super Bowl right now, so I don't know how they did. And right now, with our losses behind us, I know that every Eagles fan wants to send the exact same message to the team right now.
There's one thing I want you to do for me.
What?
Come here. Win.
If you like this video, I hope you'll subscribe. If you hate football or hate the Eagles, I totally understand. I can't imagine you made it this far into the video, but if you did, rest assured the vast majority of the videos I make have nothing to do with football or the Eagles. I like vlogging about film, food, fashion, and I guess football and the things that interest me, which this week happens to be the Eagles. Okay, I'll see you guys next week, but right now, I have to go board a plane to New Orleans. See ya.